thing about it is we're just going to throw down and we'll do 30. We'll just pump out 30. I was watching my son with that all the time.
That's 48.
I thought I was going to be telling a podcast.
950.
One more.
There we go.
You're older.
Yeah.
I can tell you a couple more things. That was good.
I was banging push-ups out like they were nothing. Hi, I'm Ed McFarland from Ed's Lobster Bar. Today, we're going to teach you how to cook a lobster properly. First thing we're going to do is we're going to boil some water. The water's boiling right behind me. It's been up for like the last 10 hours. We're going to drop a lobster in there. When it floats, it's cooked. It's that simple. We're going to take it out of the water. We're going to drop it in an ice bath. Bang, bang, bang. We clean it in 2 minutes. We eat the lobster. Delicious. Everybody have a good day.
Hey guys, welcome back to Tough Love with Dr. John O'Connor. Today's guest, Chef Ed McFarland, the Lobster King, is here today to talk about his story from down in the dumps to triumph and being the king of the New York City. All right, we're so excited to have him on. Chef Ed, welcome to the show.
What's going on, Dr. John? Pleasure to be here. Always excited to shoot with you.
Absolutely. So Ed, let's get right at it. Today I want to talk to you, tell our guests and everything about kind of how we met, how we connected, and I have to say the biggest thing that I was so excited when I thought about bringing you on as a guest was the inspiration I got from you as a business owner, as a young entrepreneur or an entrepreneur, and the struggles that we went through during COVID was really kind of our connection time. And let's talk about that a little bit, and then we'll kind of roll up into, right now, present day 2023. Right?
Wow. I mean, it's not even that long ago. It's pretty current event still.
Yeah.
And I have to say, you were a big instrumental help with me getting through it. Mentally, I was gone. Physically, I was kind of losing it. And I think that all came back into focus. We started discussing books, what to do, exercise, all sorts of different things. And you adjusting my neck here and there, allowing me to make it through every day was perfect.
Absolutely. I have to say the one thing, we were talking before the show, and one of the big inspirations, as you guys all know, I'm a huge fitness head. And Ed working in the restaurant industry, you don't have a lot of time to get out of the restaurant, especially when you're the key person. So I'd ask him like, hey, you're fit. How do you get there? And, you'd have the chin-up bar, the pull-up bar, and push-ups all day long. So as of today going forward, any guest on my show, I'm warning you now, I'll put it out there, that and I just cranked out about 100 push-ups each to get on this podcast. So if you want to get on here, you better be ready to do some push-ups. But Ed, seriously, one of the things that the takeaway is, as much as I was inspiring you, you were inspiring me because you weren't quitting. And all the books that I put on you, it's one of those things, it's like when you teach, you learn. One of the biggest things that I could take away from that was listening to our mutual business coach was the fact that he was like, Chef Ed is a tough dude. Like he's taken hits and, I guess you moved a restaurant out of, the Hamptons. That was a long time relationship with friends. Talk about that a little bit. So
I opened up a restaurant. It was my third restaurant. It was my second restaurant that would be open. We opened up a year before COVID. I opened it up with friends of mine from high school. And with the climate and the way things were, and we'll call it wokeness, I don't know that we want to say that on a podcast or not, but with the wokeness, it really wasn't taking off in Long Island for us. And while it was busy enough to sustain, it really was not the right fit for myself. However, we made a commitment, and I made a commitment to open up the restaurant, and I was going full speed. When it really wasn't working out and the partnership went south, I kind of lost two good friends of mine for over 30 years because they couldn't separate the money aspect from
the friendship.
And I think one of them took it personally that they lost their money. The other one, the money he has doesn't even matter. So it was like pocket changed him. But for the other guy, it was a loss, and it hit him. And for him, he couldn't separate it. And I couldn't have worked any harder than I did. I was out there every day. I was driving 2 hours to Long Island.
I remember.
Late at night, driving back home so I could see my kids in the morning to drive back the next day. I was spending 6 hours in the car some days just to go back and forth.
I used to try to give you all the calisthenics in the car not to fall apart, right?
I drove around with a baseball, and I'd keep a baseball in the car to roll on my back as I was driving.
Yeah. The one thing with that, and I talk about it all the time, regardless of to what self-help help book you read or podcast you listen to. It comes down to you versus you.
You know what? It's never really about the book at the end of the day. The book is a great guidance. And I think that's the biggest transformation people could make when they're reading these books and they're getting their self-help, whatever book they're choosing to read. The bottom line is it's the action you take. You don't have to follow their model exactly, or if you follow their model exactly, you have to be taking the actionable steps every day and moving forward continually. If you're not taking any action, knowledge without action is just knowledge. It's nothing. You have to actually take the steps and do something. You could learn as much as you want, get a degree in anything, but if you don't take the steps to practice, you're just going to be in the same spot where you started.
1,000% agree with that. One of the biggest things that I learned, and I've probably been working on reshaping myself for the past 10 years. During the pandemic, I completely fell apart. And it was the same thing. We were talking, like going through it, my body fell apart. And then it was like mind, body, spirit, and they go hand in hand. And the amazing thing that I saw with it was that boiling point where you get to it, just like giving up the Hamptons or Long Island saying enough. And I was in that pity party and everybody was there that you could hide from, like in plain sight. And then finally I was like, you know what? It's enough, right? I want to be healthy again. I want to get after it again. What was your big thing that when you got to the one restaurant and now you're crushing it again, what was your big push that was like that? I know your son's playing hockey. I know you reached out and I gave you some recommendations. You were looking for local stuff because I think you guys had just kind of moved down here. And I think it started out with baseball, but he really had a natural affinity to hockey, I believe, right? And
yes.
And now he's crushing with that. Was it the kids? Was it family? Was it just something inside you? What was the boiling point that said, I want one restaurant and I want to be back at the being the king in New York City. I want to be the Lobster King. I want to crush it.
So it was a combination of a lot of things. Obviously, family and my kids are a big driving force because, you want them to succeed. You want to be a good example for them. They need to see that what the fruits of your labor and your efforts really mean, that if they're putting in the effort and they're putting the work in, that they're working towards something. And if their mindset is correct and they're doing all the right things, it doesn't matter how many times you fall down. It's how many times you get back up. It's a cliche, but it's the truth.
It's fact.
And I will say, when it comes to my lobster bar in New York City, like you say, you've taken a beating. I've been slapped around numerous times. So we'll go back to 2008 with the recession, through COVID, moving locations in the city because I couldn't make a deal during COVID with the landlord. Everything. It's just, and I'm the sole owner in New York City. It's my place. I do whatever I want. But at the end of the day, what it started was I started working with mindset before COVID happened.
Absolutely.
And I think that if I didn't start studying mindset, I probably would have fallen apart. And I think the universe truly brought me to you. And I do believe, it sounds foofy, but I do believe like that. I was meant to meet you because you gave me the tips and said, hey, Ed, this is what you were doing. This is what you need to do. Come on, get back on track. And I looked at you the same way you looked at me. I remember the first day I walked into your office in Red Bank and I looked around and I went, man, he's mopping the floor. I scratched my head and I said, that reminds me of the way I worked when I opened my business. I mopped the floor, I cleaned the bathroom, I washed dishes.
100%.
If I threw somebody out of the restaurant, I will tell you I threw many employee out of the restaurant. And I washed the dishes. If I fired a dishwasher, I washed the dishes. So it reminded me of that. And I said, God, where have I gone wrong? And I had been going south and I saw that and it lit a spark in me to say, you know what? You have your family, you have this, your kids. You want to be around for this. You want to be healthy. You want to participate in this. You want to take the weekends off to go to the hockey games. I want to take the time off to go to my daughter's cheer competitions. And you have to put the time in now to get it done.
100%. And thank you so much for those compliments. I think the biggest thing was the pull away during that time was I was ridiculously into Navy SEALs and military books during that time. And Jocko Willink was always talking about lead from the front. And during COVID, one of the crazy things was it was all about, not crazy, but it was commonsensical in that it was all about sanitizing everything. And my staff was a little shell-shocked in having to do that all the time. And the assurance it gave the patients that they smelled, it was like being home having an Italian mother. Like it was, it was a joke, but like you smelled bleach and ammonia all the time. You smelled Lysol. And when all the patients would come in, they're like, Doc, all we smell is Clorox. I go, and I chuckled. I'm like, you guys should be paying me, here on the podcast because, we absolutely sanitized and mopped and wiped down everything. To the point was the running joke when the table companies came in, we ate the rawhide, the naugahyde off the tables, keeping them clean for the patients. And for me, my background having an autoimmune disease, I was paranoid because I can't have antiviral medication. So when I, in fact, did get COVID, I was like, man, is this it? Am I going to relapse and get GBS again? And I think that's why I scrubbed a little bit harder. I mopped a little bit more. I mean, that floor, I think I took like 4 layers of color off that thing because I was like, look, nothing's living in here.
But you know what's funny about that? It was natural. It's an instinct to run your business.
100%.
And it was what you needed to do to succeed and keep going and pushing forward.
I think like anything, and I saw that with you watching watching how you constantly were pivoting, during the years we know each other. I loved you were pursuing Miami, looking at that. You had the Hamptons thing going and you had the city thing going, and then you had to move. I remember, our mutual business coach, Jeff Jones, talking about negotiating. It was great because he speaks so many damn languages. And you brought him in. All of a sudden I hear him in the background. I go, Ed, wait. I'm like sitting there thinking, Ed, when you go little to him, he's going to fire off in like Mandarin and 10 more languages.
It's funny because I never seen my landlords get pissed like that before, but they couldn't speak freely amongst themselves, whatever they wanted to say, because he understood everything that they were saying in Mandarin and Cantonese. So he understood and he spoke, and it really tweaked them. But we walked out of there knowing they were never going to negotiate with me. They were never going to make a deal. And it was just became, how do I get out of where I'm at to move forward? Because it was never going to work in that location anymore. And I love that location. I was there for from 2007 until 2021.
Wow.
So I was there 14 years. I mean, it was a great location. I had a lot of foot traffic. It wasn't the ideal restaurant space, but it had charm because I had this 35-foot long marble bar. And I will tell you, I have customers who tell me they missed the bar. Yeah. They missed that seating, and it had that charm. My new space is more of a traditional restaurant layout, plus I have outdoor seating now. But the crazy thing about it was they didn't want to make a deal. There was no deal to be made. They kept saying yes, but they
when
didn't.
Pen came to paper, they weren't doing it.
They had no interest in keeping a long-time tenant that had paid the rent for all those years.
What did you learn about in that moment? Change, right? That's over a decade of being comfortable, right? And so many people stay because they're comfortable.
I'm going to tell you.
How'd that go?
I got stuck in that because I knew my lease was going to get too expensive. It was coming to the point where I had signed my second lease in that location, and it was at the height of the market in Soho, so I was overpaying. But when you're jamming busy, you overpay. It's not a big deal. You're still making your numbers. Your rent percentages and occupancy percentages are still hitting, right? So in the end of the day, I knew at some point in time a negotiation was going to have to happen. And so in the back of my head, I always knew it was coming. But you're right. You get in that comfort zone and you're sitting there going, I love this space. Customers love it. They know me. I should move. I should be looking. But you know what? It's still working. And this kind of just said, you know what, Ed? You know better. Poked me right in the side and said, get your ass going and move. You have no choice. So the inevitable was coming. I knew it was coming. But that kind of said, you have to do it now.
So hearing that's great, because that's always one of my things that I always say to my son, my young athletes I've worked with over the last 30 years, comfort zones are killers.
Yes, absolutely.
Because you go with the one move, you stay in the one place, it's the one person, whatever. And I think when we're comfortable, we're not challenging ourselves to be better. And then what I notice from me, and I say this to my team all the time, is guys, when we get comfortable, probably when that happened 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks ago, you can notice, if you could look back to look forward, these deficits, these lulls are happening because we got comfortable in May and now we're feeling it in September. And what do you notice in the restaurant business that you have to constantly keep resetting, re-challenging, re-cueing yourself to keep it, to stay, the king of the area you're in, to just keep coming and keep being busy?
So I think one of the things is constantly adapting to the way business is being done. And that was the most difficult one for me, where we transitioned to mostly takeout and then back to sit down. And then you had to bring takeout back to get it at a level that works for the restaurant. Also, staying on top of the employees, especially in a restaurant now where you don't have quote unquote restaurant employees. We don't have those front of house, mercenaries, so to speak, that were just waiters and they love the grind.
Career waiters.
And they made great livings and big money. There's very few of them out there, at least in New York City anymore. So kind of staying on top of people and, you know what, somebody doesn't work just because they show up, you can't keep them. You don't keep somebody anymore because they show up. You have to move them out. I'm sorry, it's not working. Oh, it's not working. You have no interest in this job.
You
don't have an interest in being here.
Yeah.
So, you kind of look at it and go, okay, we got to keep making changes. You can't during the shutdown, I would say I kept people because you couldn't get people. And I didn't need a lot of people, but I'd keep a few people around. And when I moved into the new location, I sat there and I brought people over. And do you like the ducks? That's awesome.
Yeah. I'd say that's when you live in the country. I'm like, we're about to get hit by about 5 million geese right now. Your car is done. The Jeep is going to be ruined.
But so what happened was I brought people with me, and I quickly realized that what they were good at, helping me when the restaurant was shut down and packing bags and getting food out the door, didn't transition back into an open restaurant. And that's been one of the biggest challenges in the new location and the new way of doing business is you don't have all of the people that are there to be waiters. They're there because they want something to do, but it's not what they're interested in doing, and they don't want to be good at it.
Having so many friends in the restaurant industry, and we were just at my friend Dom Lebrano's place in Lebrano's, and they're first rate. Watching that, I'm blown away. And we see it in healthcare all the time, right? Because there's different levels of jobs and they come at different rates. And everybody thinks that healthcare is this huge amount of money that comes in on insurance. But with insurance reform that's constantly going on and constantly adapting for the worse, the competitions keep going backwards. So you have to be innovative on finding people and how to motivate them within a budget, because it's not like going to a restaurant and they keep ordering, the check keeps going up. We have set amounts or cap plans where the patient doesn't even understand what that means. No matter what we do, we're only getting paid X, right? And that's such a challenge because when you're a person like you've been around me, you see how much free information I give to people. And when the staff's not getting paid, there is no tip, there is no gratuity in healthcare, it breaks them. And then you see it, and when you're quality people like us, just like you're looking at that person, hey, that's not going to work. And it's hard though, because it's not like you could tell them, hey, listen, if you work a little harder, they're going to tip you. Right?
Yeah.
And you don't realize that. And I grew up in the food industry, with my mom as a kid. I started in the coat room, then I was worked in the banquet side, which I loved, and then I went into restaurant, waiting tables and whatnot. And that was always amazing money, And the one thing it teaches you, and I've heard this so many times in seminars and coaching events, is always try to find people in hospitality. Because if they can manage a table and make people feeling like, regardless of whether it's a 5-star restaurant or a bar, that it's like an at-home or in-home experience, they're going to come back, they're going to tip, they're going to tell their friends like, hey, it was amazing. I saw Chef Ed, he comes out to the table, knows what I drink, brought down 2 IPAs, whatever, set it up. I'm tipping 35% because I love that.
Well, that's the big thing in the industry, right? And even with your business, it's making people feel welcome.
100%.
And I would imagine it's more difficult in your industry to get that person that really cares, that the patient walking in feels welcome and happy. In the restaurant industry, that's their job in the front of the house. They're there to make you feel welcome. And that's been a challenge for us in the industry with the transition
Post-COVID.
of staff post-COVID. Now, I'm fortunate my kitchen staff stayed and I was able to keep them. They wanted to work. They're with me a long time. I have guys in my kitchen working with me for over 13 years.
Amazing.
I'm open 16 years. So I never kind of worry about the food end of it. But
Thank God, right? Because your food makes you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But you know what? I think that service at the end of the day is more important than food. I think people will come back to a restaurant because they like the server, they like the bartender, they like the manager. Even if the food is just, it's okay, but they're going to go back and have a drink and a snack because they love going there and they love the way they're treated. So when somebody walks in, that feeling of, oh, hey, Bella, whatever it is, right? More like if you're at the old school red sauce joint,
Yeah.
or hey, Mr. and Mrs. such and such, or hey, whoever it is, hey, hey, Dr. John, what's going on? Have a seat, quick drink with you, sit
Yeah.
down at the table for a
huge.
second. It goes such a long way. It makes such a difference with the customers, and especially when the servers know them. I think more importantly for the customer is that that they know the server when they walk in. I have customers tell me all the time, Ed, I love it. All the servers know me. They've been with you for so long. So, when we transitioned spaces and we transitioned out of the shutdown, that didn't exist as much. So building that back up's been a challenge, but we're finally getting there, I think. And I have the right staff in place to move forward.
Tell me this. So I love that. And again, going back to the business coach, I know Jeff's a music head. Then all of a sudden, I mean, don't get me wrong, the tats, I see the whole thing. I can see you totally being like a trance or techno DJ. And then all of a sudden I see you on the Wheels of Steel and there you are DJing. And, you went from the king of Lobster to the king of mixing it up. So tell me what that was. And is it something relaxing, like people go surfing or people, mountain bike? What was the DJ thing all
So
about?
it's interesting. I had been talking about doing a DJ program in the restaurant from when I moved it down the street. And I had a program in Long Island. So I had the equipment, I had the speakers, I had the DJ controller, had everything I needed. It was just sitting in my shed and I wasn't using it. And I kept thinking, I want a DJ, I got to learn. But you know what? When am I going to do it? I'm doing all this other stuff. And I sat there and go, you know what? I'm starting the program. As part of starting this program is me learning to DJ. So I went from learning to DJ to producing music and really loving it. So it kind of, for me, is like the next transition of my career, right? Being a chef is somewhat being on stage, and I've done a bunch of TV stuff, but I never got the TV stuff that I wanted to at that level. And I think that, the universe threw this out there at me that, hey, you love music, you love listening to music, you love electronic dance music, you have this equipment, let's get started and see where it takes you. And my son DJs with me. He helps me write the music on, we use Ableton on the computer. So I have all the stuff I need down there, and I got a little studio set up. So it's really great. And I love it. I'm really enjoying it. And it's kind of the next extension of the restaurant. And I see them go hand in hand. I'm DJing at the restaurant on Saturday nights now. Not every Saturday, but a lot of the Saturdays. And I'm producing music. I'm putting it up on SoundCloud. I'm taking an online class in music production so I could really learn how to make dance music properly and, make all the beats fit right and learn how to use the software correctly because, believe it or not, it's really complicated.
Not as easy, without a doubt.
Complicated. So I'm loving it. And to me, it's the next transition and it goes hand in hand. I'm DJing at the restaurant. I can play my music there. If I travel and I'm DJing somewhere, because that is the next step for me is to travel and DJ, get up on the stage, hopefully do some festivals and stuff. And it's another way of promoting my restaurant and
100%.
promoting myself as a chef. So I see it going hand in hand in the two, rising my career at the same time in both respects.
And love that you say that. It kind of brings me right into, I have so many of my executive business guys that I talk to who are developing my brand. And they said, Doc, what's the fitness thing? And then the podcast and the coaching. And I said, guys, that's me being the chef. I utilize my core 4 sciences, the PEMF therapy, the shockwave, the laser, the cryotherapy, because it keeps me moving, right? And we're the same age. So I chuckle all the time. It's like, whether you have young kids or older kids, my kids are a little bit older than yours. But the reality is that when you're grinding like this, I needed that cheat code, right? So I know my, Clean Media, they're awesome at getting my fitness stuff out there. And I'm very particular on how consistent I am with getting up at 4:30 in the morning. I start my recovery, my rituals, routines, and like when you go down to the basement and you're sitting there scratching it up, I'm down in the bar room and I'm sitting on PEMF. I'm moving to that, and literally I'm an advertorial for the Mark Pro, PEMF, laser, this, that, moving through it. But the reality is when they see it and like, what's that why? When they're looking at the videos, they go, guys, proof's in the pudding. During COVID, I was almost an invalid. Like I was literally looking for something to lean on. I wanted to go to bed at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And when people would see me, I'd put on the show, but it was a show.
Yeah, the show. Yeah, it's a show. But you know what? You have strong mindset, and while you're giving that show, eventually
it's going to snap out.
It's going to snap out.
And that was the thing. It was just like every day in COVID when we were in business together and we were sitting there commiserating. It was, hey, we're going to turn the corner. We're going to turn the corner. And I love the DJing thing. It's funny. When I was in grad school, I was in the nightclub business, and probably the first big DJ that I got to do an event with was Sonique. And we brought in all kinds of, Sid Vicious and, DJs a little bit older than us. Jonathan Peters, like these crazy names from back in the day that I can't even think of half the names we brought in. But it was amazing to see how talented they were. But the funny thing about it is, I know you're listening to music and you're thinking about these names. When I would see these people, I would expect to see what you see on the TV where they put these models with the shaped heads and this and that. And I went to pick one of them guys up off the plane, and I was like, back then when there was like the flip phones, I remember calling my guy and go, I see a rock and roll dude, like long hair, this and that. They're like, that's him. He's going to throw down. And literally the crowd, the Southeast crowd were like going nuts. And I'm looking at this guy and I'm telling you, you would have literally thought he was in Megadeth.
Yeah.
And, but the bottom line was his musical flair was that. And that was back when it was all vinyl, So it was pretty cool. Like watching him come with these like trunks. Like he's like, I spin vinyl. That was just, I want to say I'm like dating myself. That was probably right around 20 years ago. And probably a little bit older. That was right when all the DJing off the screens and the computers started.
Yeah.
Now I think it's like really mostly that where they can really mix in and they fade into off computers and
Yeah, it's mostly off computers. Now I do have friends who do
Spin
use
some vinyl.
turntables and spin vinyl, and I eventually will learn to do that. That's down the road. But that's a whole different art. Those guys are
I will tell you, before Jam Master
amazing.
Jay passed, I had him at an event in Atlanta. And I always loved Run DMC coming up as a kid. I think I didn't give up my, when I got down there to the point where it was funny being a Northeast kid that went to school in the city. I rolled in with my Kangol, my Adidas, and my shell tops, right? And I remember getting hired because I was all muscled up and, and somebody walked up and was like, pointing me up and down. And like, when you're from the Northeast, I literally was like, I took like a quarter step back. Like, I'm not even here 5 minutes to be in a fist fight. Great. They always like, this look, you want to work for us with the Caesar haircut back when that was the thing. I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, what am I going to be doing? They're like, we just want you to stand there. This whole thing is going to work, And it was funny because it was literally like growing up with like Down with the King and this and that. But watching those guys, and it was literally right before he got killed in the city, watching him go live was unbelievable. Like he could move across turntables and go and talk. And he was just so unbelievably talented. It was just, or Jam Master Jay or whatever, and it was just absolutely amazing to watch. But going back into the restaurant, what do you have going that's like your big thing? Like I always was amazed with watching restaurants, especially when they get past like that 5-year mark. A lot of restaurants close and lose that like, wow. Like almost like in a relationship where you lose that spark or whatever. How do you keep it up? I mean, you move locations, 16 years. How do you keep it hot? How do you keep it hopping? How do you keep you hopping to, everybody says family and this and that. And I feel like, yes, that's a thing, but I think it has to come from within.
No, you know what? For me, the restaurant is my life. I'm the restaurant, right? So it's every day I want to be there. I want it to be successful. And you have to want it, right? There has to be that drive inside you more than just family and money or anything else. There has to be that drive that you want to be successful. You have to have that inner lion, right? That roar inside you that keeps you going every single day through the ups and the downs. One of the things at the restaurant is you have to stay on top of the details. And even if you're not changing the menu, the details are what matters. And, we'll talk about the business coach, Jeff, because I remember when he walked in and I started working with him, and he'd be like, Ed, that's out of place. This is out of place. I go, what the hell happened to me? And it was like watching you. I used to do that stuff. I used to walk into the restaurant every day and be like, that's out of place. That's out of place. That's out of place. What's going on here? Why isn't this done?
Disney experience.
and you know what? I'm back to that now.
Yeah.
So I walk in and I'm like, guys, why is that chair stacked? Why is it that over there? Put that back. Why isn't that clean? I told you, don't put something there. That's got to stay empty. And that's kind of the little things that, I was doing all the time, but I wasn't noticing when I went out to other places because I wasn't paying attention. To me, I was going out to detox to get away from it. And then I started working with Jeff and I started looking at all those things in the other places. And I went right back on, you used to do this all the time. Why aren't you doing this? And now I'm doing that again. And that's kind of the things you need to stay on top of. And, small little menu changes. I think more than menu changes is tweaking the dishes that you already have to try and constantly improve them all the time.
Where the client says, I can't believe it could get better. They couldn't imagine getting better.
Yeah, this was a great dish, but wow, you made it better. What did you do different? Why does this taste different? I'll give you an example. During COVID, we had time, right? And I think my lobster ravioli is probably the best lobster ravioli you're going to eat anywhere in the world. Number one, specifically, I've eaten lobster ravioli everywhere and liked almost none of them because everybody puts all this other shit in it to save money. There's cheese in it, there's this, there's that. Any kind of filler they could put in there, it's in that lobster ravioli. And maybe there's a crumb of lobster and you don't taste it. Now, my lobster ravioli had a ton of flavor because we had a lobster reduction, made a lobster paste, mixed it into the sauce. But what we do, we went from using a pre-made type pasta that I was using for ease of use with my
Speed
staff,
it up, like putting
speed it up to making our own pasta in-house. But not just making pasta, we're infusing lobster paste into the pasta, which really gives it an even bigger lobster kick. So it's one of those things where I had done it before with other dishes, and I had made fresh pasta. We took the lobster ravioli and figured out a way to make it better.
Now, your question, we didn't just disclose the secret thing.
No, there's no secret. Nobody knows how to make the lobster paste. I'm not worried about it. But even my Caesar salad, right? I love Caesar salad. My kids love Caesar salad. Did I change the dressing? No, but I went out and I saw somebody was using fried capers. And I go, wow, you know what? That's a nice little touch. So fried capers went on the Caesar salad. Wow, what a difference it makes. And I'm still using the same crouton, but I changed the anchovy. So little things to elevate the dishes where you can always kind of tweak and tweak and tweak. The only thing I don't change is the lobster roll. That's the only dish. And the lobster mac and cheese I don't change.
Well, it's funny because, you're going to laugh when I say it, but little things make the big things happen, right?
Yes.
And that Jeff Jones, right? And that resonated with me. For a person or people like us that are very OCD or very, success-driven oriented. Mm-hmm. And I always tell people, and to be honest with you, it'll bring me to a tear for me. And I know that we've been there we've shared this, and I've kind of looked in your eyes and looked in my eyes where you say, yeah, man, I get it. Like where I genuinely get upset when I lose my why, when I lose my drive to be the best, because I don't even feel like I'm halfway there. When we opened up, we did our first national coaching event this weekend, and we had a phone call coming into the weekend that was probably, and Matt was on the call with me, was probably one of the most amazing phone calls I've ever had as a business owner, realizing we were onto something. And then when we got to speak, and our goal was not to be packed, because my greatest fear was if it was packed and I had this great product, which I know I do, then it'd almost be like if you and I were partners at a restaurant, right? And then all of a sudden we had like 50 seatings, but 200 people show up on the first night at the first seating, and there's nowhere to put them. And so 75% of the people are pissed, not about the food. They couldn't get in.
Yeah.
Right. And so at first, ego perspective, I said, we're not that busy. And then I kind of reframed it and said, this is a perfect amount of people. I want to see how I present to owners of the companies, of national, international companies, or top national salespeople. And if we could educate, motivate, and inspire owners and the top salespeople, then I know the doctors will get in line. And we hit a couple strides where, like, in a podcast, we were like, that's fire, keep it going, right? Like we're on something. In that moment, I said, this is my jam. Just like you said with the DJ thing, like you want to go, like I hit it. And there were a couple businesses kind of shopping us out that were sitting in the audience, and literally got, massive text message saying, was so informational, so excited, definitely looking forward to do business with you. And I'm not one for compliments. Like I don't like you to toot my horn. I don't care about that. And I think you're kind of the same way in that way. I felt it, and that made me happy. And then, I was driving out, to relax that night, and I started thinking, I was like, this is just the beginning. I am going to now, when I'm listening to Alex Hormozi, or I'm listening to Ed Milet, or I'm listening to Tony Robbins, and they do these massive events, I want to get there. Like I want to get on that stage and be able to drive people and help people to change their lives and inspire them to say, hey guys, you know what? I realized when I got hurt, first selfishly it was for me. Like I was like, holy shit. I was laying down crying, like just miserable, broken. I'm like, who's this guy? I came back being paralyzed, fractured skull, rebuilt knee, stomach surgery. And I didn't say boo. I broke my face on a Sunday and just put glasses on, like, $2 glasses to cover up, went to work. And we saw like 100 patients that day. Yeah. And I was like, I have never stopped. I have never looked at pain or fear or failure as something other than, you want to go? Let's go.
It's part of the process.
It's part of the process. You got to take those hits. We had a guest, one of our first guests, and I genuinely knew as a professional basketball trainer for, 20 plus years that he was about to feel adversity, because when I was taking him through it, it was like me working with one of my basketball players that had never lost a big game or who never took an injury, an ankle sprain. He had never really gotten hit before. And I was intrigued because I was like, so when you're on that big stage and you get a bomb hit to you and you've been rocked, and I'm listening to him and I kept trying to draw it out. I'm like, I know you got hit. I know you must've gotten hit before. I know someone really drilled you. And he's like, I was really blessed. And I think he may have had like a little bit of a hand procedure or something like that. And as the trainer of me, and even the dad, I was upset for him. I'm like, I always go back to watching on Instagram, and I think Mike Tyson was in an interview, and he goes, everybody's tough until they get punched in the face.
It's true.
And he got hit, and I remember my guys reaching out saying, it's over. And I was so laughing because like literally I'm like, this thing's going to go for 15, a half hour, whatever, however long these fights go. I don't think it lasted 30 seconds. And just like that, I was like, oh my God, I felt like there was a premonition there that I'm like, I just want to tell this kid like, hey, if I was your coach, your mentor, your business coach, your life coach, your dad, now that's day one.
Yeah.
Right there. That's going to tell you right now, you're either going to want to grind and be like, you got me good. Next time you see me, I'm going to light you up.
It's funny because it's all about words and the way you phrase it. And you mentioned it before, just your perspective of seeing the customers come in.
Mm-hmm.
Was it too much? Was it too little? But you turned around and you said, no, it's the right amount, because you had a plan. But you could have easily said, my God, I don't have enough customers. What am I going to do? There's not enough patients here. There's not enough clients. There's not enough people in the restaurant. But it's words that make the big difference.
How you frame it.
And it's funny because I didn't study any of really Bruce Lee's teaching, but he's somebody I've read where he says, they're words are spells. You never want to say anything bad about yourself, about what you're doing,
you believe it,
or anybody else, because your mind will take that and run with it subconsciously without you even realizing it. So the more you take that right mindset and say, no, I'm right where I need to be. And you could be in the mud, dead broke, and there's nowhere to go but up, but you only see down. But it's that mindset and those words that you tell yourself that lift you up from the ground. That's why the guys you talk about, the books, these mentors that you follow and read about, their stories are so powerful because they overcame homelessness, but not because of they got lucky or somebody handed them a check.
They didn't quit.
Because they changed they changed their mind, they changed the way they thought, the way they saw the world, and the way they did things, and they didn't quit, right? And that's
100%.
the big one. You don't fail until you quit.
100%. And it's funny. My son's down at IMG playing baseball, and probably for the 6 months leading up to that, because I've been his corner guy, much like, and I love watching the cuteness and uniqueness of what you're doing with your son. And you call me and I was like, yeah, I want to be in there. It's like, be able to help out. I feel like I'm like Uncle Doc. Doesn't even know that I'm like, if you need somebody now he's beyond me. But when he was little, I was trying to push in every direction I could. And one of the things with my son, what I realized was, I said, Johnny, you could do it perfect and fail. I was listening to this podcast, and it was Ed Milet and Sean Casey. And Sean Casey is probably one of the best career batting average in Major League Baseball. I mean, just absolute stud, and probably one of the nicest people in baseball. And he had this hitting guru coach that he was, that he met, and obviously you're a Major League player, people want to talk to you. So he reached out to this guy, and the guy sounded like he was a good bit older, almost like a sports writer. And he says, he gets him on the phone and says, hey, this is Sean Casey. And I know who you are. You got a great swing. And he's like, I'm in a slump. And the guy's really abrupt, and it reminds me of a coach that I work with from Brooklyn. And he says to me, he goes, well, tell me what you think a slump is. And he says, well, I lined out 9 times. So you hit line drives 9 times. Yeah. And then 2, I got deep in the pitch count. I put one off the, I put one deep in the gap and this and that. He goes, let me hear that one more time. You 9 line drives and 2 to the wall, and they were caught, but you hit the ball hard. He goes, there's nothing wrong. You call me when something there. Boom. And hung up on it. Right. And I laughed, and I told my son, I go, last year during the season, at the end of the high school season, he had, 5 or 6 balls he put off the fence. And he's like, I got the worst luck ever. And I'm laughing, and I'm saying to myself, success comes in various forms. And what your mind saw was you didn't do enough. Perception is that's the first time you did that, you'd be amazed. But because you have done that, you expect more. Yeah. And I don't mind that, right? But you got to appreciate being right there.
But that's the hard thing for everybody, for anybody, is seeing what you've accomplished and rewarding yourself for these things. And even myself, I do stuff and I'm just kind of like, yeah, okay, whatever. And I'll be hard on myself. And people are like, no, that was great. No, this was amazing. You did all this stuff you're doing is great. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. It's not. I don't feel it hitting on all. If you don't feel it hitting on all cylinders personally, I think it's hard to get that in your head that you are succeeding, because it's not at the pace you want it to be at, right? You're succeeding, and the steps could be like these little tiny little baby steps, but you're moving up the ladder. But everybody wants it to be like a rocket ship, right?
Yeah, that's it. It's funny. It's like everybody wants a trophy, but nobody wants to do the work, right? And one of the things that I realized this weekend, I was thankful for, again, Clean Media and my team around me. When I was on stage this weekend, I was mic'd up, much like being here with you now. I was so comfortable being on stage. It was just like me and you talking. There was no one there. And again, was it a huge audience? No. But the funny thing about it was I wasn't in my head envisioning there was one person there. I was envisioning there were thousands. And it was getting me more fired up and more calm and more quiet and delivering a stronger message. And I was like, this is what I want to do.
Isn't that funny though? Because in any respect, when you're up on a stage on TV or doing any of these things, people get down on themselves when they go, or even if I put a song on SoundCloud and I look at it and go, wow, you know what? I got 500 streams. It's like, well, it's not 100,000 streams, but you know what?
Have you got 100,000 streams?
No, I have 500 streams on. I just started doing it, but I have 500 streams on a song. But I look at it and go, you know what? The right attitude about it is it's 500 more than I ever would have had if I didn't put it out there.
100%.
Right? And so you can't get 1,000 or 10,000, 100,000 or a million if you don't get one. So it starts with one. And even if you're talking to one person and you're on stage, one person shows up at your show, you have one fan, you build a second.
It's a winning streak.
But it's true, and it's just the way you look at it, right?
Absolutely.
It's one more fan than you had before.
Absolutely. The thing about it, I'm loving where the show's going today. When I started the podcast, when you're us, you're so, and like you look at the music, I look at the followers, I look at the views, and I'll be blown away. What I think is going to be a great one, I'm like, oh, great, 12 views. And then one that I'm like, yeah. And then all of a sudden it's like, 5,000 views. Yeah. And I'm always intrigued by what people want. And I think right there is the special sauce, because I'm like, really? And then literally I'm texting these guys, and it's amazing because, Sean doesn't sleep, Matt's up. We're all early risers. And I'm like, is anyone going to answer for me how that one went? Yeah. And then I'll be looking at another fitness thing and I go, and I felt like I looked great in that one. And I'm like, the only people that like that was my mom and my mom's best friend, and there's 70 and all the people in the retirement community. I have an entire fan squad somewhere down in South Jersey that absolutely thinks I have the best body ever. So at least I know that if I ever want to go older, I got a whole pack down there down in Bayville.
It's funny. I see the same. I see the things the same way because we do the YouTube shorts and we put all this content out there, and I'll throw a video up there, and one video gets 5,000 views, same kind of thing, and then another one gets 500, and I look at it and go, how's that possible? This video is great. It's made the exact same way. Everything looks perfect, but nobody looked at that one. Everybody looked at this one, and who knows what really makes it work, but you got to keep tweaking it and looking at it, and eventually you'll get it where everybody's constantly on top of it. So
as we're kind of winding down on today's show, I wanted to ask you one last question. What is the next big push for you? Because I'm going to throw it at you today, right? So, we did our push-up challenge when you got here. And what's your big challenge? What's the next thing you got going on that is your fire? Because I know for me, I said, my winter campaign coming into, November of this year. And it's been a rough last couple of weeks with everything going on, my dad's health and some other things going on. But my goal for this winter is to literally just work on my legs, right? I chuckle and I'm looking at these fitness videos and I'm like, yeesh. I got spaghetti legs and I got these big arms and I got to bounce out a little bit. But whether it's business or work or this or that, what's the challenge? What's on your?
So I'm going to give you two things.
Got it.
I'm going to give you two things I got. Number one is getting back in that top shape that I was in where I was fit, I was ripped, I was cut. My body fat was like 10%. And that was during COVID when I was doing that jailhouse style work, I will call it, push-ups, pull-ups, planks, squats, just body weight every day, all day. I had an alarm set every hour, and every hour I did a set. And that was all day, every day. The second thing is we're going to put it out there. It's kind of like a 2-year goal, and that's to be on stage at EDC. Oh. So EDC DJing, which means I got to get a couple of hits out there to make that happen. But that's my big push. And obviously continuing.
If you get there, I'm coming. So
or you can hang out backstage. And continually to push the restaurant back to the pre-COVID levels where we were doing big sales, busy all the time, where it was just jamming. There was no ups and downs because the business is still erratic. We have good days and we have bad days. Sure. And it goes hand in hand with what's going on in New York City right now. But the point is that's where I'm pushing towards. That's why we keep making these changes. That's why I keep showing up at work every day and I keep working at it. There's new ways of doing things. I'm going to find the secret sauce again, and we're going to be back at those numbers.
Listen, I wish you all the success in the world. I think that, in the friendship that we've built up over the last couple of years, I'm proud to call you a friend. I've enjoyed your food multiple times, and anytime you want to bring it down, I know this team's here saying, Doc, you got to throw this guy some money. We can get these lobster rolls down here. But I will say, guys, listen up, because we're definitely going to try to get a collab going for a lobster truck, because I think that's going to be a go-to. But you know what? Thank you. I'm still looking forward to the next. I think the next time we have you on the podcast, we're going to open up you spinning.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, I'll bring the equipment over. So we'll crush it.
Light it up a little bit. We'll have to do it at Freehold. Let you kind of have some sound to rip in. But thank you so much. And guys, thank you so much for joining us today on Tough Love Podcast. Please follow us on our platform. Again, share if you find value in this. Share it to any friends or family you have. Again, follow Ed's Lobster Bar on Instagram. We'll share everything on our platform today when we write up this show. And thank you so much. Ed, thank you so much.
Awesome. This was great. Thanks, Doc.
Thank you.